Welcome to the Empower Your Wellbeing course. We begin here with session 1. In this session, I really want to lay the frame of what it is we're actually doing here, what makes this important, how is this going to help you achieve what it is you want to achieve, and how we're going to make it as easy and sort of like empowered, that's the title, right? As empowered as possible. To begin, let's understand what is empowered wellbeing. For me, empowered well-being is informed choice that is flexible in the world. Informed, flexible choice. When we have the information we need to discern what on earth is going on to do with nutrition and food and our bodies and what do we need and what's a great fad diet and what's, this latest product, powders, magical supplements they want to sell us, is that we need to be able to understand what is actually happening between the moment of eating something and what it actually does in the body. And when we have the information of what it does in the body, then we can go out and use this along with the tools that we'll gather to understand nutrition labels, how to then make a choice. And the most important part is that it is flexible. I've worked with so many people throughout the years who have tried to follow very strict, limited, diet plans or fad diets, or I am allowed this and I'm not allowed that. And none of this is empowered because there's no choice there. It's rules, it's dogma, it's lack, it's scarcity. So what we're looking for here is instead this holistic perspective, this understanding of, I understand what that will do in my body, I understand what that will do in my body, and then we can make the choice that's most appropriate, most useful for us in that moment. Through this course, we're going to be gathering holistic tools that allow us to support the relationship with food, with our body, and with ourself. And with these three components becoming informed, flexible, empowered choices, then possible, and you can start to see the results that you really, really would like to achieve. Each week, I'll be giving you inspiration to take off into your life to play with. Now, often when I've given people, I've called it homework, then people have this idea that, if they don't do it well, then they're bad and they haven't done the course properly. And it's like some weeks it's easier to engage in things, and some weeks in life there's more going on, it's harder, there's less time. The weekly inspiration is there for you as a point of inquiry to find out a little bit deeper about certain aspects of the course. So in the week ahead this week, we'll be looking at things like the critical lens, food talk, our body as a garden to nourish, and we'll be taking these inspirations to play with over the week. To get the most from this course, there's a very, very useful and important thing that you can do. To do that, you need a pen and some paper, and this is it. And it's to sit with the question for 2 full minutes. You can set a timer on your phone if you'd like to. Sit with the question, what is it I'd really, really like to gain from this course? And you could think about it in relationship with your body, in relationship with food, in relationship with nutrition, in relationship with choices, however it is, whatever comes, give yourself 2 full minutes to really write and write and write. And if you come to a pause in your pen, you can just ask yourself, and what else? What else would I love to gain? When we have the clarity of where it is we want to go in our life, what it is we want to experience, what it is we want to achieve, it makes it much, much more likely that it can happen. It's like if I asked you, would you like to go on holiday with me? And if you imagine you said yes, and then you said, right, how are we going to get there? And I'm like, wait, where are we going? And you're like, no, how do we get there? Plane, train, da-da-da-da. If we know where we want to go and we can talk about the destination together, then the chances are we both end up on the holiday that we both actually want to go on. So like this course, what is the destination for you? What brings you here and what makes this important for you? What is it that you'd really, really like to be able to experience? So take your pen, take your paper, and spend 2 minutes doing that now. My inspiration to create this course came from a document that the UK government published in 2013. It was called Living Well for Longer. And they only say things like that if there's a problem. They only do research like that if there's a problem. And the problem was that in the UK, though we are living longer, we're spending more years, between 10, 15 and now 20 years, in poor health, disease and disability. Now, of course, this has a big impact on our culture and our society in terms of like healthcare needs and people's ability to work from that perspective. But for me, it's kind of like, so we're told that we work until our retirement, and then in our retirement we enjoy our life. But if we're now expected to spend those last 2 decades in really, really poor health, that just doesn't make any sense to me. So the UK government did this piece of research, Living Well for Longer. They wanted to know, well, what are the risk factors? What are the things causing the problems in people's bodies and health that are causing them to have this disability and these levels of disease? Of those 20 leading risk factors, 13 of them were directly to do with diet. So I read this and I read these risk factors, literally things like diet low in fruit, diet low in specific types of fats, diet high in the other types of fat, and we'll learn all about that in the second and third sessions. But I read this list and I was like, well, this is fantastic. If each person can have the informed, empowered choice and the depth of understanding to be able to know, okay, what are those things? Which ones do I need a little bit more of? Which ones do I need a little bit less of? And if we get that balance right, then we have removed 13 risk factors. And the opportunity to improve our health and well-being is phenomenal. Now, the thing about this document is that it was actually withdrawn and republished. And when they republished it, instead of having these 13 individual risk factors with the specifics of the dietary conditions that cause problems in the body, they were all grouped into one factor: diet. The useful thing about them doing that is that before, in the first table of 20 risk factors, the highest risk was tobacco. And now, when they group all the dietary factors together, the number one risk for disease and disability and the absolute loss of health and well-being in this country right now is our diet, which means that it's also our greatest opportunity. So we can enter this course by understanding that what we eat is fundamentally important, and that by taking this journey through informed, empowered choice, we are giving ourselves the absolute best chance and opportunity for a thriving well-being. So the frame here we're bringing in is how can we use our nutrition, how can we use our diet, how can we use the simple things we eat across the day to give us the absolute best of our physical well-being, to support our mental well-being, to give us the kind of energy levels, mood and foundation for us to live our life and do the things that are most important for us. Now we could ask a further layer of question. Why is it we're in a situation where the main risk factor for health is what people are eating? Why is that such an issue? What's going on with what we're eating? Now, what we're told in our culture is that this is an individual issue. We're told that each person is to blame for their choices and people should just make different choices and then they'll have different health outcomes. This happens a lot within the frame of obesity. We're told it's their fault and their choices. And we have to look slightly wider than this. Because right now in the UK, more than 60% of the population are overweight obese. If more than half of a population are overweight obese, is it really individual choice, or is there something larger at play, something a bit more systemic here? Now, one of the things I want to share with you is about the way that the food industry works is essentially run by multi-conglomerate companies who care about profit and not about their products having nutrients in. So I use the word food and use the word products. And when I'm speaking about a product, it's something that is edible, but it does not necessarily contain any nutrition whatsoever. And now when you walk into a supermarket, it's largely full of these products. And it's because if you make something out of very, very cheap ingredients and market it with your fancy branding and sell it for a high cost, then you make a massive profit. But they're making profit at the cost of our health and well-being. And this is happening systemically all over the world and becoming more and more of a problem as Western culture is spreading into other cultures as well. And one great example of this is the organisation Nestle. So Nestle have right now the greatest capacity for nutrition research than any other organisation, whether that's a health organisation or a governmental organisation in the world. And the two things that they are most interested in researching is how do they make products that don't make you feel full? So you eat them and eat them and eat them, but they don't trigger off the natural response and communication from your body to say, I've had enough now. So you eat more and more and more of their thing. And how do they create a product that creates addictive behaviours? Eat some, want more. So if they can make this product where you eat some and want more of it and it doesn't make you feel full, Well, that's genius for making money off a food product, isn't it? Because if you want more of it all the time, then you're going to eat more of it. And if eating more of it doesn't make you feel full and you want more of it, then you're not satisfied and you're in this cycle of cravings. If you think about it, when you go into a shop, you can buy like a small packet of crisps for, I don't know, 70 pence or something. Or you can buy a great big packet of crisps for £2. So you think you're getting a better deal and you buy the big bag, but the big bag is, you've actually just given them £2, you've given them twice as much money. And the chances are is that big bag isn't going to actually last you any longer than the small bag. Because many people start eating the crisp from the minute they get in the car. That's just the reality of how our food culture is now. I have a very long history of overeating, binge eating, secret eating, and I'm definitely not the only one. And in my years of delivering this course, so many people have this relief when they realise that there's some normalness in our culture of having this relationship with food. And this is all largely down to the way that the products are specifically developed to make you want to eat more and to not be fulfilling or satisfying. This is done through almost like clinical trial levels of production and testing and product development, where, say, for example, someone's developing a new biscuit and they want people to eat the biscuit. They'll make different variations of them, put them on plates in a room, get a lot of people to go in the room and then watch the people and observe which ones do they eat more of, which ones do they keep going back to, which ones do they eat the fastest, and then get people to fill out all kinds of feedback about them. And there's all these weird measures that they use to describe the way that products impact a person's body. So one of them is called mouthfeel. Mouthfeel is the specific measurement of how much bite something has before it completely dissolves. So generally we like there to be a bit of bite, but we don't want to do any chewing. So this kind of like mouthfeel is a measurement specifically to find out how quickly can we go from putting it in to swallowing it. Another one is bliss point. Bliss point is sort of like to do with how much euphoria we feel as we eat something. So that can be to do with sensations on the tongue, dopamine responses in the brain. Another one, this is ridiculous, is the crunch factor. Crunch factor is a scale that can be measured. And if you go and imagine being in the crisps aisle, you've got all the different types of crisps and different packaging and different flavours and different textures and different crunch factor, how much it breaks in your mouth or how much of a snap it makes. And most of the crisps are made by the same organisation, or like 2 or 3 organisations. They don't care which one you buy. All they want to do is make sure that they've got something with the right mouthfeel and crunch factor that's going to make you buy it again and again and again and again. So we need to start noticing that there's this bigger system going on. When we come to our simple choice of making a food, there's been this whole thing happening in the background to push us to benefit somebody else, their profit at our expense, because none of these things offer the body nutrients. None of these things support the body to feel well. So we're building up this picture so we can start to bring in some self-compassion, because we're not individuals navigating just our life choices. We are individuals within a system driving for us to consume their products, eat more, not feel full, buy more, and enter this whole cycle. Another factor we want to consider within this like overarching culture is our healthcare system. So right now, if you want to see a GP, your doctor, well, one, it's very hard to get an appointment, but if you do manage to get an appointment, that doctor has around 9 minutes in order to find out what's going on with you, make next steps or prescribe something, and then send you off on their way, write up their notes and see another patient. This is quite a system. And it's very, very difficult then for a doctor to find out the underlying issue or the underlying cause of a health problem. If we can find the underlying cause, then often we can find not just a treatment to try to keep the symptoms away, but allowing the body to, rebalance itself and be nourished and to thrive. Now, a great example of this is a lovely friend I had in her 70s. She was having a really, really difficult digestive experience. She went to the doctor. In that 9 minutes, the doctor did not once ask her what she was eating. So she was having a digestive issue, literally in her digestive tract where all the food goes, and there was not one question about her diet. Now, this isn't the GP's fault. I'm not blaming GPs here. Most people who train as a doctor have an absolute deep intention to support people's well-being and to help them be, help them thrive in their life and be able to feel comfortable in their bodies and safe and well. And within the system that we live in now, a GP actually doesn't have to learn anything about nutrition, and the average GP does around 7 hours on nutrition. By the time you've done this course, you will actually know more about nutrition and physiology and the body and how it all relates together than your average GP. So you go in to see a GP with an issue that could be being caused by your diet, and because they don't have any capacity in terms of time or knowledge to be able to support you, then they become the great prescriber. The reason that this is important is to start to notice, well, actually, how much can we support ourselves? So when people have inflammatory issues, tweaking the diet can change the inflammation in the body. My lovely granddad's a great example. His hands used to swell up enormously so that he couldn't really use his hands very much. And now he has an anti-inflammatory diet, something we'll look at, deep dive that in the 5th session. And he doesn't have the same swelling in his hands at all. He's got more mobility than he had 10 years ago. And he's back out in the shed making wooden birdhouses, So our diet is this access to our freedom. It's this ability for us to live and do the things that matter to us. And obviously he was on all kinds of anti-inflammatories and painkillers and all kinds of things. But if we give the body the thing it actually needs and can use in a holistic way, then the chances are that the body isn't just trying to fight symptoms, but can actually heal and repair itself. So you might find yourself asking, how did we get here? How did it end up like this? And a big part of that is to do with cultural shifts and changes that happened after World War II, where there was a greater interest in convenience foods. Now, my background and training is within public health. And within public health, the kind of idea is that all the policies and all the systems of a country could ideally support people's health and well-being and be about furthering people's well-being and maybe even their enjoyment in life. And within public health, there started being a noticing that as there was more and more convenience foods being consumed in the country, there was starting to be shifts in people's health, seeing more heart disease, more diabetes, more cancers. And at this point, public health is like, we think it's these products, we think it's all these convenience products that are happening. I'm not so sure about this. And then the government is, having to take this on board and be like, okay, well, maybe they are causing issues for people's health. So for the companies that make these processed products, they're starting to being blamed for the changes in health. So what they said was, what we'll do? What we do? It's free market economics. You can't necessarily decide what people can and can't buy. We can sell, and then they choose to buy it, and that's their choice. And public health is saying, yeah, it's their choice, but it's hurting their body. And the companies came back with the solution of, no problem. We'll tell them. We'll put on the back a nutrition label, those funny little, things you see, carbs, proteins, fats, with all the grams and the percentages, and they've got quite more complex in the past few years. That little table on the back there happened because it was completely known by public health, by government and by the food industry that these products were causing harm to health. And therefore we individualised the choice and said, well, if we write that on the back, then people will know what they're choosing and it's their fault and we're no longer to blame. This is where that individualised nature of choice came out, where they can do whatever they want within the food product. And obviously that's developed over the past years to include all kinds of additives and preservatives and partially hydrogenated fats and all kinds of other really industrial derivatives and ingredients that would never ever have made it into your kitchen or in your food, even 50 years ago. And the way that they get away with it is by saying, well, we're telling you, there's the ingredient list, there's the nutrition label, it's your choice. How can we make a choice if we don't know what we're choosing? And this is a big part of what this course is for. Over the next 3 weeks, in the carbohydrate session, the fat session and the protein session, you'll be able to look at the back of one of those labels and in a really simple way find out, okay, well, what will this do in my body? What will this do in my blood? What will this do in my digestive tract? And then we can start to make a choice. Do I want to have this? What if I had the other one, and we can compare products. It can be really, really simple if we know how to use that information for our empowered, informed and flexible choice. A final piece I'd like to mention to do with the role of public health and government and the food industry is around the messages that we see that come out from the government, the kind of public health messages. Now you'll probably know we should be eating more fruit, eating more veg and eating more whole grains. These are messages that have been pushed through definitely since the late 90s, posters in schools, posters on buses, this kind of agenda of getting people to eat more fruit, veg and whole grains. Now that message is able to get through from public health via the government and into our public eye because they're saying eat more. all the messages and research that public health does is actually assessed and controlled by the heads of multi-conglomerates, including McDonald's, including Tesco's. And they work with the government to find out, do we like that policy or not? And if they don't like it, it gets vetoed. So when we get things like the eat more messages, eat more fruit, eat more veg, eat more whole grains, then the food industry loves this. It's like eat more means buy more. And then they have another extra little thing they can write on the front of the packet. Contains one of your 5 a day, made of whole grains. It just becomes part of the whole sales strategy, because fundamentally so many of us do want to eat well and do care about our health and well-being. So when we see those little labels, we feel some sort of relief. It's like, oh, thank goodness, because it's so complex and so confusing. The world of nutrition is what we're trying to make simpler here. So the messages that say eat more, they're clear. You know what fruit looks like, you know what veg looks like, you know what the whole grains look like. They've got all those nice little labels they can put on to make it easy for you. But then the eat less messages are a bit more complicated. Eat less means buy less. And for a profit-orientated industry, nobody wants the buy less message to be clear or understandable or that actionable. So we end up with eat less messages like eat less sodium, eat less saturated fat, eat less sugar. Now most of the sodium, the salt, the saturated fat and the sugar that people eat, it's not the salt on the dining room table, and it's not the sugar in the cupboard that you might use to do a bit of baking with. It's the sugars, salts and fats that are found in the shiny packet food that makes a massive profit for someone else at your expense. But we get these eat less messages just speaking about specific ingredients because the food industry prefers it that way. So if we gather all these pieces, we can find that we're living within a system that is prioritizing profit for products over our health and well-being. So we have to find ourselves here with a kind of seat of compassion in ourselves to notice, okay, the way I've been eating, the way I've been choosing food has been largely impacted by this wider system that I am in, which is focused on profit, doesn't necessarily have a huge amount of support or information available to me with ease to understand about food and my body, and that now we're going to be going on this journey with this firm ground of understanding that to have empowered choice we need to be informed to be able to navigate the most important factors. Now for me, it's all about giving you tools and you skills and you understanding that you can use in your life. So in the next section, we're going to be looking at 3 specific things that you can take away into your week to start to tweak and shape and question that will allow you to start to head towards your really important goals. In this first session, I would love to share with you 3 tools that will give you this beginning piece of how to work with our relationship with food, our body and ourselves in a much more critical, informed and empowered way. The first one is our critical lens. I'd like you to imagine that I can give you a pair of glasses that allow you to look at all marketing and all advertising with a new and fresh perspective. Marketing and advertising works with our deep subconscious to create beliefs, values and ideas that we believe are true without us really consciously noticing it. For example, I was at a friend's house the other day and they offered me a jar of yeast extract, also known as Marmite by the branded name, and they said to me, sorry, it's not Marmite, it's the cheap one. They're definitely made in the same place. They're definitely the exact same thing. But for some reason, we have to feel shame if we don't have the branded one. It's like, where does that come from? When did that begin to be installed? So we're taking on these critical lenses, these glasses that allow us to see through the marketing and the advertising. And we're going to be working with this in 2 different perspectives. Marketing and advertising work by utilizing the values that we hold, aka the things that we care about, and within identity, this sense of how we perceive ourselves in the world. So one example, if we were working with values, a couple of years ago I was walking through Liverpool and there was this advert repeated many times across the town. And in the picture, it showed a young boy and an older woman, so maybe like a grandmother, grandson kind of type. And the little boy is holding this present and he looks so happy and he's looking up at his gran and she's looking down at him, and they had all this sense of shared connection. So we're stepping into the values here. We just come out of COVID, or we're coming through COVID. So this was this sense of, family time. It was all about like happy Christmas, and it was all about the magic of Christmas, and it was all very sparkly and beautiful and looked quite perfect. These are all things, this kind of closeness, especially those relationships between grandparents and grandchildren, And that's going to appeal to a lot of people. A lot of the things we care about are captured there in this image. However, what this image was actually advertising was a very famous brown, sugary liquid that contains absolutely no nutrients and actively harms the body. You probably know which one it is. So we start to notice with our critical lens, what is it they're actually selling? And what they're actually selling is usually something made from sugar, syrup, flour, flavourings, and additives. Generally, this is the kind of stuff that they're actually selling, or like refined potato. So what are they actually selling? We can ask ourselves and start to focus on a little bit more of, well, what's in the packet? What's in the bottle? What's in the carton? And what are the things they're saying I'm going to get? What are they saying I'm going to get? It's like a happy family Christmas. Who doesn't want that? But will this thing help with that? And the answer is probably not. On the other side of this, we have this sense of identity, this sense of who we are when we buy the product. So there was a fantastic advert a few years ago, and TV advert, and it showed a panorama of a beautiful apartment, high-rise, looking out on the night sky of a city. It's all twinkly and sparkly and gold and lovely, and a gorgeous woman on her own in the apartment, impeccably clean apartment, dressed in this gorgeous gown, all bronze, and she finds her way to the kitchen, and she opens the fridge, and she takes out the chocolate bar, and she lies on the chaise longue in the living room, and she breaks a piece of it off, and she eats it and has some sort of orgasmic ecstasy, we can only assume from the advert. Now, what are they actually selling is a combination of sugar, derivatives from cocoa, mixed up with milk fat and oils to make it melt the way it melts. What they're selling here, this identity, is like this confident, independent, in this case, woman, and she had the clean apartment. She clearly, earned a lot of money. She had all those different things. So this idea that we're maybe a little bit sassy, maybe a bit strong, this whole like, I'm, independent woman, all this kind of stuff. But the reality is that for that particular chocolate bar, and I'm certain you can guess which one it is, most of the time that's bought at the supermarket checkout because it's there waiting for us as we're like waiting bored. And then we eat it on the way out the supermarket, or even sat in the car, and we eat it and it's gone. Does it help us become a confident, independent, sassy woman? Probably not. It actually adds more of this stuff into the body, which, as we'll learn across this course, can actively damage us, not just like long into the future, not just like, oh, eventually it will cause me problems. It's like within an hour of eating it, the body goes into an extreme stress reaction because of the type of ingredients that this is made from. So a critical lens is not there to make us feel bad about our choices. That's not the purpose of it. The critical lens is there for us to tap into noticing how much we've been manipulated and controlled by the extremely intelligent and heavily invested in marketing and advertising that goes on as a norm in our culture. And it's everywhere. It's in magazines, it's on billboards. You can't drive without seeing a load of adverts. And it didn't have to be that way. It's not that we have to have a culture built around this. It's just gone on like this in this consumer capitalist way of being. Imagine if instead it was poetry. We could have a choice around this, and it's just become very normal. So we're starting to question that norm and noticing, well, what are they really selling here? What's actually going on? And from that place, we can bring in, once again, more compassion and a greater sense of freedom in our choice of what is it they're really selling, and do I actually want to purchase that? Do I actually want to continue investing in that? So here are your critical lenses, here are your magical glasses. A great way to experience them is by going to a supermarket as if it's a museum. So you can't touch anything, can't buy anything, and you just literally look around, look at the words that they use, look at the colours they use, look at the position of things on the shelf, go down the sweeties aisle and see how everything moves lower, and all the cartoon characters being like, hey, these are fun, it's fun if you eat this. Marketing and getting the children really young with this preferences for the sweet, sugary and processed foods. You can go to the supermarket and get really mad at it. I don't recommend that. Being mad isn't very good for our body, but it might drive in us a passion to be part of something different by making different choices in the way that we can choose and the way that we can live our own lives. This is our first tool. Let's see our next tool. Our second tool is something that I call food talk. Food talk is the way in which we engage with food. So this can be around our habits, our choices, our mindset, some of the ways that we speak about food. And within Food Talk, what we're looking here is to bring an awareness to how it is we're relating with food and fueling that with some self-compassion. And by developing this compassionate self-awareness, then we can start to find out, does this serve me? And what might I want to do instead? What are the other choices that I could make? What are the other ways of being that could serve me better? A lot of our food talk happens in a subconscious way. And the way we can think about this is if I was to say to you, have you ever just found yourself in the toilet or in the bathroom and you get there and you're like, how did I get here? Do I even need to pee? Probably not. But it's very likely that you found yourself in the fridge or looking in the cupboards, and especially looking in the snack cupboards. You don't find yourself rummaging in the fruit bowl. We often find that we can be drawn to food in a very different way to the way that we relate with other of the necessities within our life. And this is because food has a chemical impact on our body and can create cycles of addiction and craving. And we'll look at more of this in the next session. By bringing our awareness to this food talk, it is not to judge ourselves or to be hard on ourselves, but it is in fact to be able to notice, this is going on. This is going on. I think of it as like a funny dance or a funny game that I've been playing and I wasn't aware of it. And then I'm finding out and I'm like, okay, so what do I want instead of this? Do I still want to keep on doing this? Our food talk, our sense of our relationship with food in this subconscious way can be deeply, deeply disempowering. Another example of food talk could be, say you're out at a cafe with a friend and the friend's going, hey, should we be naughty and have a cake? Why are we using this language? Being naughty, it's making us like, oh, we're really bad. And it's like, what are we getting from this? It's like, do we want to eat the cake or not? Do we have to tell ourselves that we're naughty and we're bad to get this kind of like inner little high from doing it? It's like we either want to eat it or we don't. We want to put that into our body or we don't. We want to eat loads of it or none of it or some of it, And we're opening up this noticing of what it is that's going on in our relationship with food. What are the kind of things we're saying about it? What are the kind of things we're thinking and how we're reacting? Within food talk, there are some particular phrases that I found in myself and in others that I've worked with over time that I would love you to be able to meet and maybe find in yourself with a little bit of that like humorous edge of like, wow, that's funny, isn't it? My favourite one is just one. Say I was to offer you a fruit bowl, you wouldn't pick up a piece of fruit and say, well, I'll just have one. But if I was to offer you a plate of biscuits, you'd say, oh, I'll just have one. And it's because we know that it's very hard to just have one because the food is very addictive and chemically stimulating. So I'll just have one can help us notice. It's like, oh, well, what's going on there? What's going on there? My other favourite one is, then it's gone. If we just eat the entire thing, all the packet, all the whatever it is, then, oh, thank goodness, we don't have to worry about it anymore. Then it's gone. Food talk can also be where we put restrictions on ourselves, where we say, well, I can't have that, or I'm not allowed that. And the funny thing is, we can't have it and are not allowed it because we decided we didn't want it. Sometimes there are people with allergies who are then told that they can't have it or are not allowed a certain product for their well-being and their health. And that can be slightly different. This can often happen in this food talk way, where a person makes an active, conscious decision to eat in a more nourishing way, and so has things that they're choosing not to eat anymore. But rather than it feeling like a choice, it becomes, oh, I can't or I'm not allowed that. This can be a lot of the diet culture that comes from this. I would say that diet culture feeds this idea of being naughty or being bad, and the kind of like shadow that this feeds, and the way that these two kind of go together. Oh, we can't have it, so if we do have it, then we're naughty. Or we're not allowed it, so if we do have it, then we're naughty. It's like, no, did we choose that we didn't want to eat that and wanted to eat something else instead? So actually, if we then are eating the thing anyway, well, clearly the whole of us didn't want to do this. This is why I do parts integration coaching, to help us work with the whole of ourselves rather than the part that's like, we shouldn't eat it, we want to eat it. We shouldn't eat it, we want to eat it. How do we integrate this within ourselves? If you want support with that, message me. We can do a one-to-one session. Some of the other food talk can include things like if it's cheap or if it's discounted, Whereas me and my sisters eating cake as teenagers, if you just have a slither, it doesn't count. But if you have 10 slithers that's possibly bigger than a slice, it still doesn't count magically somehow. So in our world of food talk, this is just a small splash of us finding out some of the things that can go on within our relationship with food. Over the next week, along with your critical lens, I'm inviting you just to take a deeper noticing into what's going on. What is it you're telling yourself? What is it you're telling other people? How does it feel as you're choosing things? And as we deepen our awareness of this is when we can start to find new options. And you might ask yourself, okay, well, what do I want instead? How do I want to be relating to food instead? And with this awareness, with this compassion, and with this new choices, when we have new choices, this is when we're stepping into empowerment, because we are the one choosing. And we'll build tools to support this as we go through the following sessions. But beginning in this place, a compassionate self-awareness. And if you notice any of these things, the best way to have some compassion is to have a little smile. Like, oh dear, aren't I a funny little human? So this is our second tool. We've got our critical lens, we've got our compassionate self-awareness of our food talk, and our final piece is about understanding the deeper mechanics going on within the body when we begin a digestive process. To begin understanding the digestive process, we have to ask the question, well, what is food actually for? Now, often our relationship with food is to do with texture and taste and the flavours and the smells and how it looks and sharing with other people and treating ourselves and all this kind of stuff. But the real purpose of food is that when we eat food, it comes into the body to provide us, ideally, with nutrients. These nutrients are very literally the resources that the body can use to build itself, heal itself, repair itself. And through this is how the body functions. And how the body is able to function determines our mental and our physical health. So food is not just like this sensory thing. Food is the way that the body is able to support itself in all of its functions. Now, if you were to imagine redecorating your house, for example, and you need certain resources for that. You might like the nice brush for doing the edging, the good paints that allow you to, get a good even colouring of it. You might want something to cover the floor and protect the surfaces. You need these resources in order to make it in a really good way and have a really good room and have a room that feels nice to be in and a house that feels well decorated. Now, if you have your great dream of how you want your house and your room to be, and then I come to you and say, well, here are your resources. You've got a paintbrush, but it's one of those like bristly kids ones that make really horrible marks. I've got you some paints, but they're not actually really wall paint, but they'll do. You can use them on your walls. And I haven't got anything for you to cover your surfaces with, so you'll just have to maybe get splashes on things. You've got some resources. But how well are you going to be able to make that room? How well are you going to be able to redecorate? How well will it be able to function and make you feel good? It's the exact same with food and the body. If we give ourselves the resources the body actually needs to be able to build, heal, repair and function effectively, then we're going to reap the joys in an easeful way of having the best opportunity for mental and physical health. So food is very much our opportunity to nourish ourselves. And I'd love this to become the foundation principle within your mind of what food is. Each meal, each snack can be there to nourish yourself and help you to feel good. Now, going on the journey of how to do this in a way that feels empowering will build in the next sessions. The thing I'd love you to focus on this session is a deep understanding of the digestive process within the body. I like to think of the body as being a little bit like a factory with all kinds of things going on. And whenever we eat something, this factory is getting a delivery. And within the factory, lots of things are going on, building, healing, repairing, functioning. And when the delivery arrives, then this delivery has to be unpacked. So instead of focusing on functioning, building, healing, repairing, unpacking is going on. And when unpacking is going on in the body, this is what we call our digestive process. So the digestive process takes time and energy from the body when it would otherwise be healing and repairing. This becomes really important if we look at our 24-hour cycle. And if the body could really, really choose, at night time, we would not be in a digestive process, because this is one of the most important times during our sleep for heal and repair. What the body will be ideally doing is having a space in the day where we break our fast from overnight, our breakfast, we begin eating. And then, maybe we have 3 meals through the day, or meals and snacks. There's different ways of eating for different people. But for there to be a point where we finish eating so that there is here a digestive break before we go to sleep. When the body has this way of eating, what we see is a dramatic improvement in the sleep quality, and people actually see changes in their weight, so it can contribute to weight loss, because what we eat in this section of the evening actually stores on the body as fat more than if we ate the same thing at this time of day. So time of day makes a difference, because what the body's trying to do at this point is get into its sleep cycle, so it stores things rather than digesting and using them. So we see natural weight loss here, and we also see improvements in sleep quality. Because the body isn't trying to digest and sleep at the same time, the sleep becomes much more deeply nourishing, healing and repairing. I worked with a woman last year, and she did 3 days of having a time where she started eating a little bit later in the day and finished eating a little bit earlier in the day. And on the 3rd day, she woke up like a light bulb, she said, and it completely changed her sense of her energy and her mood. So we see more energy and a boost in mood. So before we even look at changing what we eat, we can start to begin just by tweaking the timings of what we eat to give our body some of the best support for itself in an easy way. Within these timings, you might have heard of something called intermittent fasting or intermittent feeding. This is a kind of like a modern approach of this very, very natural cycle. When my granddad was a boy, this is how he ate. People didn't snack on into the evenings. This is a relatively new problem that the body is experiencing because of the way that our culture is relating to more convenience and snack foods because of the profit driving them, as we mentioned earlier. Ideally, from the research on intermittent feeding or intermittent fasting, I like to call it intermittent feeding, so we're focusing on what we are doing rather than what we're not doing, is that for this time, this duration, this eating window to be between 10 and 11 hours. I like to start eating at some point between 9 and 10 a.m. So say we call it 9. If I was to count on 10 more hours, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 p.m. So I want to try to finish eating by around 7 to 8 p.m. When I do that, my body is able to receive the resources and nutrients it needs across the day in useful ways, and to have a digestive break before I go into my sleep cycle. And when I do this, what I find that in the morning when I wake up, I'm actually ready to digest and have an appropriate level of hunger at this time, and that I'm actually not hungry in the evenings because I've eaten well throughout the day and supported myself. So should you want to try this in the coming days, I recommend doing 5 days in a row, where you choose an eating window that works for you. You can do 10 hours, you can do 11 hours. It is incredibly important to begin eating before 10:30 a.m. When we eat after 10:30 a.m., it changes the way that our circadian rhythm, that this cycle works. All of our body works on this 24-hour cycle. And when I've worked with people often, if they push this eating window after 10:30, then they start to have difficult food behaviors later in the day and a lot of cravings and intensity later in the evening. So if you want to start later, whatever works for you in your life, absolutely stick to it. And if you can, eating before 10:30 a.m. can be really supportive of the way that our body feels during the rest of the afternoon and the evening. Ideally, outside of these eating window times, we'll be having things like water and herbal tea, because these don't activate the digestive system. Whereas if we have things like tea with milk in it or coffee with milk in it, that's when we'll be activating the digestive system. I personally don't stick to it in such a rigid way. Sometimes I wake up and have herbal tea, sometimes I wake up and have some tea with milk in it. It's not the end of the world if You are not going to be a person that other people want to be around. If you haven't had your morning milky coffee, then please have your morning milky coffee. The most important thing here is about giving us the digestive break in the evening and giving more space in the morning to give our body the opportunity to get ready to enter the digestive process. Each session on this course will end with some inspiration for you to take this off into real practices that you can play with in your daily life. It's nice to get the knowledge about nutrition and well-being, but until we actually put it into practice in our life, it doesn't actually do anything for us. So how is it that we bring this into our life? One, the critical lens is by asking the question, what are they really selling? And maybe noticing this if you hear something on the radio, see a billboard advert, see a TV advert, what are they really selling? That's your question there. Within the world of food talk, it's about noticing in that compassionate way some of our ways that we're relating with food. And this could be the things that we are thinking, and this could be some of the things that we're saying to other people, or maybe some things that we're doing if we find ourselves rooting around in the fridge when we're not necessarily even hungry. Thinking, saying and doing, noticing with compassion. And you might want to ask yourself what you want to do instead, if that feels good for you at the time. Now, by acknowledging that our body is working in this 24-hour system, what we might want to do is support the digestive process by choosing a 10 to 11 hour eating window. And the purpose of this is not to struggle and get through it. It's I did it for 5 days. I did the thing. I did my homework really well. This is different. This is, what is it like for you in your body? What is it you notice? What is it that feels different when you do this process? Each of the inspirations is there to help us find out a little bit more about how it feels for us, about what's useful for us, about what it actually means for us in each of our own lives. So the eating window is there for you to find out how good you can feel in the morning, how deep your sleep can be, and how regular your way of eating can support yourself to feel good and achieve the things you want to achieve through this course. The wonderful thing about the eating window is that it gives us opportunity to discover the difference between hunger and a craving. Hunger wants to eat, and cravings have preferences. I used to run a forest school, and on some of the mornings, a child would come up to me with their bag and say, I'm really, really hungry, I'm really, really hungry. And I'd be like, okay, let's look and see if there's any fruit, because they could have a fruit snack. If they said, yeah, great, I've got banana, and then they eat the banana, I'm like, okay, they were hungry. If they said, oh no, but I've got this, and then they might pull out the bag something special that's been put in there for them, often made from sugar or flour or sweetened with fruit juice or something like that. And they're having a craving. That was not hunger, because what they wanted was this preference, and it's often for something that's either sweet or salty or has a specific texture. By being able to notice these cravings, it then helps us to notice the food talk. So these can support each other to deepen that understanding of the self and of the opportunity to find out what is actually going on. And in the mornings, when we wait maybe that little bit of time before we eat, then we discover what I would call happy hunger. Hunger that's saying and signalling to the body, I'm ready to eat now. If we get overly hungry, uncomfortably hungry, that's the body then actually going into a panic mode and saying, I need things. We're not trying to look for that here. What we're looking for is to develop a relationship with happy hungry, where our body signals to us, I'm ready to eat now, and then we can eat. And what you'll notice is that you digest really well at this point. So if you get things like bloating or any uncomfortable digestion, actually being hungry can support those digestive issues to ease in a really simple way. My final piece of inspiration for you here is to enjoy fruit and enjoy water. Aiming for around 5 glasses of water per day. In mils, that's around 1,050 mils. And for fruit, we're aiming for 2 pieces a day. You might put them in a smoothie, they might be frozen berries or something like that, but aiming for around 2 pieces of different fruits. Taking these off into your week is there to help you find out how could you feel, What's it like when we tweak these different things? What's it like when we acknowledge that we're in a wider system here and that we're trying to navigate it probably with very little information and potentially with a lot of confusing messages and misunderstandings of things around carbohydrates and fats and what we should and shouldn't have and what's good and what's bad. Begin with these foundation pieces. Meet yourself and your own relationship with food with this compassionate self-awareness. Tweak some of the timings of eating, add in some more water and fruit, and then we'll join together for the next session to begin with carbohydrates and understanding exactly what is going on in the brain, what is going on in the gut, and how can we help ourselves to feel full and satisfied for longer. Thank you so much for joining in with this first session. If you have any questions or want some one-to-one support, you can email me with your question or we can arrange a coaching session. I wish you so well for the week and look forward to working together again in session 2.